The village of Lag has been at constant war with the demi-humans spread across this world. One of the soldiers, Kai, teams up with his friend Manso to take down one of the gorilla monsters, but even the power of friendship isn't enough to help him because Kai's fighting skills are absolute garbage. Now Kai is cornered and he most certainly would have died here, but at the last second, the gorilla is killed by Olha. He was appointed as the guardian of the village and blessed by the land god, and as such, he is the strongest soldier of them all. He is able to effortlessly cut the apes down one after another until eventually he comes face to face with the gorilla guardian. This is the strongest gorilla, so you think defeating it would be a challenge for Olha, but he is still able to cut it in half within seconds. Now that all the gorillas have been defeated, the soldiers start cutting into the gorilla bodies, and one of the soldiers hands Olha a ball that is suspiciously shaped like gorilla nuts. Olha drinks the liquid inside without a second thought, and after doing so, he begins to glow with a red aura. Thankfully, these things aren't actual gorilla balls, they are something called God Stones. Drinking the liquid inside is known to increase a person's strength and spiritual power, so it would make sense for everyone in the army to drink at least one so they can all grow stronger. But no, the rules say that they are only allowed to drink tiny drops of it. They all get their drops, and after drinking his drop of Godstone, Kai can already feel his spiritual power increasing. So he asks Manso if he can have some more. But unfortunately, he's just a foot soldier, so there's no way he will ever get permission to drink a full Godstone. The rules say that almost all of the Godstones must be given to a guardian bearer like Olha. So even though Olha is already strong, he has to become stronger, while the rest of the soldiers are stuck at weak power levels. And no one sees anything wrong with this system. Once everyone returns to the village, a huge celebration is held in honor of their victory over the apes. But even here, the amount of food each person gets is determined by their status. So the strong people and the children of the chief get tons of meat, while the scrubs like Kai get a small plate of miscellaneous soup. The soup doesn't actually taste that bad, but Kai wishes he could get some of the good food too, but that will never happen while he's still a low-level soldier, so he vows to train and get stronger so he can raise his status. Immediately after the banquet is over, Kai heads outside and starts training as hard as he can, but it's hard for him to train well when you've barely gotten any food to eat all day. He yells out that he really wishes he could eat some rice balls right now, and a few moments later, Manso shows up and asks Kai what rice balls are. Kai says he isn't exactly sure because the word just randomly spawned in his brain one day, but he gets the feeling that rice balls would be tasty. There's something Kai has been wanting to talk about, so he points over to the hill where the village buries its fallen soldiers, and that particular hill is for all the people who had families. It is constantly visited and maintained by the families of the fallen, but in contrast, the hill next to it is an absolute mess. It is filled with the gravestones of people that no one cared about, so nobody bothers maintaining it at all. Orphans like him are bound to end up buried in a place like that once they die, with no one to visit their gravestones and no proof that they ever lived in the village. That's why Kai wants to grow stronger and survive long enough to live a meaningful life. And to do that, he has no choice but to eat his tiny food portions and train harder than anyone else. But even that wouldn't be enough to ensure his survival. He would need some kind of special ability to give him an edge on the battlefield, but he's not sure what he could use. At the same moment in the castle, Olha and his sister Jose are walking to their father's room. Olha tells Jose that she doesn't need to concern herself with war briefings because she isn't expected to fight like Olha. Even so, she tells him she wants to defend the village as well, but Olha dismisses her and says a daughter of the chief's family doesn't need to learn how to fight, and no matter how much she begs, he won't allow it. Jose thinks it's unfair that she doesn't get to fight in battles just because she's a girl. As if to rub it in, when she looks out the window, she sees Kai and Manso having fun and training. Since Manso is older and stronger than Kai, he's way better at fighting than he is, so Kai can't do much aside from play defense. Manso tells him he will never get stronger if he doesn't learn to attack, so Kai tries attacking, but when he does, he leaves himself wide open. So Manso is able to knock him back, causing him to fall to the ground and hit his head. As a result, Kai gets a massive concussion. He begins seeing memories of his past life in Japan come flooding back to him. And as his mind flips through memories, he distinctly recalls the word magic. However, when finally regains consciousness, he has no idea what magic means because the word doesn't exist in this world. This isn't the first time Kai has seen unfamiliar memories, and apparently in this world, there are plenty of people who see similar visions, but Kai doesn't think this is worth telling anyone about. Sure, the memories taught him about things like rice balls and magic, but that information is useless to him here, especially since magic was just a fairy tale in Japan anyway. But if he were somehow able to use magic, he would be able to show off during their next battle, and that would definitely raise his status. Meanwhile, over in the castle, the chief has just received a letter from one of the neighboring villages, and it sounds like the other village is being attacked by orcs, So in accordance with the alliance agreement between the two villages, the people of Banya are required to go help as soon as possible. The chief doesn't like the fact that he has to send the soldiers into battle again, even though they have barely gotten a chance to rest and recover from the battle against the apes. But Olda tells him that it is a soldier's duty to be marched around and to die for the village, so they don't have any right to complain. However, the chief reminds him that the soldiers are still a part of the village as well, so he shouldn't treat them as disposable pawns. Back in the barracks, Kai is having trouble sleeping because he can't get the idea of magic out of his head. Manso can tell that something is bothering him, so he asks what's wrong. Kai tells him it's not a big deal, but he had a dream about being able to create fire out of nothing, as strange as it may sound. He fully expected Manso to tell him he sounds stupid, but surprisingly, Manso says he has heard about something similar before. He was once told a story about a strange traveler who came to the village. The man wanted to start a fire, but he had no kindling on him, and normally, it would be impossible to make a fire without gear. But the man simply raised his finger and created a flame from thin air. Kai is surprised to hear that there's actually a record of someone using magic, but Manso reminds him that he only heard it from an old story, so there's no guarantee that it is true. Even so, hearing that story has motivated Kai to try learning to use magic, so the next day he heads out and finds a secluded spot so he can start training. He still isn't sure how magic works, but from what he can recall, magic requires some sort of mysterious energy, and the closest thing Kai can think of would be spiritual energy, so he tries using that. He holds out his finger and commands his spiritual energy to come out as fire, but it's not that easy. He realizes that he probably needs to gather his spiritual energy, so he begins trying to circulate it through his god's stones, but nothing happens no matter how much he tries. Meanwhile, orcs have been sighted just outside the neighboring village, and they've already killed a dozen soldiers, so the rest of the soldiers assemble to fight back. The soldiers wait outside the forest to see if the orcs are still there, and as soon as they spot the orcs, they charge in. The orcs begin attacking as well, but Manso manages to stab one through the heart immediately. Kai decides to rush ahead so he can get a kill as well, but then one of the orcs throws a dead body at him, and it pins Kai against a tree. The orc then walks up to him, and it is about to kill Kai, but before it does, it is shot by several arrows and is finished off by Manso. Manso yells at Kai for running ahead on his own and tells him to get back into the formation, but it looks like Kai hurt his leg when he got hit, so he can't walk on his own anymore. Meanwhile, Olha is decimating the orcs, and once they realize he's way too strong for them to beat, they all start retreating, and Olha refuses to let them get away, so he ditches all the other soldiers and chases after the orcs. That pretty much leaves them to deal with the remaining orcs on their own, and considering how hard it is for them to fight the orcs on their own, the soldiers are cooked. The squad leader orders all the soldiers to run and scatter so most of them can survive. But with Kai's injured leg, he and Manso have no chance of escaping the orc. Kai doesn't want to drag his friends down with him, so he stops Manso and tells him to go on without him. Manso doesn't want to leave Kai behind, but he knows he has no choice, so he apologizes and promises to visit his grave. Manso then runs off in one direction and Kai hobbles away in the other direction. He knows he is hopelessly outmatched, but he refuses to give up on his life, so when he hears the orc approaching, he tries to cast fire magic to defend himself, but it still doesn't work. A few moments later, the orc throws its blade at Kai, and it strikes his shoulder, severely wounding Kai, but on the bright side, the near-death experience makes sparks fly out of Kai's fingers, so maybe he really can use magic. But he might not live long enough to figure that out because the orc runs out of the bushes and starts strangling Kai. Just then, Kai notices the sparks coming from his finger, and he realizes what it means, so he points his hand at the orc's face, and with every bit of willpower he has left, he summons flames to burn it to death. The orc screams out in pain, and Kai manages to break free from its grip as a result. The orc eventually collapses from all the damage it suffered, and Kai is proud of himself for finally defeating a monster on his own. But there's just one problem: his hand is still on fire. He starts frantically trying to put the flames out, but a few moments later he begins to pass out because the fire is using up all of his spiritual energy. If he doesn't stop it soon, he's going to die from spiritual energy exhaustion, so he needs to think of something fast. All he needs to do is think of his spiritual energy as a dam that he opened when he used the fire magic, so to stop the fire, all he needs to do is stay calm and close the dam. But it's really harder for him to stay calm, because the orc is still alive, and it is walking towards him. Kai eventually manages to stop the flow of his spiritual energy, but the orc has already gotten to him and he can still barely move, so it picks him up and starts walking. However, it hasn't killed him yet, so Kai figures out that the orc must be blind from all the fire that it took to the face, and it doesn't realize that Kai is still alive. Kai doesn't want to die, but he knows there's no chance of surviving with the current state of his body, so he at least wants to take the orc down with him. So as the orc walks next to a cliff, Kai slashes it across the chest and both of them fall into the river below. Kai somehow manages to survive the fall and drags himself out of the water with his knife, but he is still dangerously low on spiritual energy, so he needs to act quickly if he wants to survive. He spots the orc's body nearby and this time is definitely dead, so he uses his knife to cut into it and pulls out the orc's god stone. Drinking the god stone liquid should help him regain his spiritual energy, so Kai doesn't hesitate and swallows the entire thing. As the spiritual energy begins flowing into him, Kai is already starting to feel better, so he lays down by a tree to rest. And now that he has a moment to think about it, he realizes that this is the first time he has ever drunk a full godstone before. His spiritual energy won't be an issue anymore, however, the wound on his shoulder is bleeding a lot, so he is convinced that he is still going to die out here. But on the bright side, at least he gets to die while looking at such a pretty sunset. Back in the village, all the soldiers have returned from battle and are getting ready to celebrate their victory over the orcs, but Manso isn't in a good mood right now. One of the other soldiers sees Manso looking depressed, so he comes over and tells him to just be happy instead. Just then, he notices that Kai isn't around, and he thinks it's weird since Manso and Kai are usually always together. It takes a few seconds, but it eventually clicks, and the guy realizes that Kai must have died, but instead of comforting Manso, he tells him to just get over it since Kai was worthless anyway. Kai spends the night passed out under the tree, and by the time he wakes up in the morning, he's surprised to see that he didn't die after all. In fact, he feels better than ever before. His broken leg has healed, and the cut on his shoulder has also sealed up too. He's happy with how things turned out, but he's also a bit confused because drinking a godstone shouldn't be enough to heal such severe wounds overnight. Kai thinks it might have something to do with the wall behind him, so he takes a look and realizes that it's a stone with a bunch of inscriptions on it. He tries to get a look at the inscriptions, but there's too much ivy in the way, so Kai uses his fire magic to burn it all up. However, his power is way stronger than it was before, so Kai gets blasted across the valley. While he is getting back on his feet, he takes a look at his reflection in the water, and he is shocked to see that there's a divine crest on his face now. He knows this is the sign of a guardian bearer, but a few moments later, the tattoos fade, so he assumes he was just imagining things. He walks back over to the stone so he can take a proper look at the inscriptions, but those words are in a language he doesn't understand, so he gives up and plans to start heading back to his village. He finds a cliff face that looks climbable, so he starts grabbing the rocks to escape, but for a split second, his divine crest appears again, and he accidentally crushes the rock he was holding onto. He falls back into the valley, and initially he thinks the rock must have been weak, but then he grabs another rock and he is easily able to crush this one as well. He realizes that he must have gotten a major power boost from drinking the godstone, and Kai is really happy about it. But while he is celebrating, he hears a voice telling him to go, and he doesn't want to find out where it came from, so he starts climbing the cliff at full speed. Once he gets to the top, he is amazed by how easy that was, and he is even more excited about his new strength than he was before. But he wonders if this is really the power of God's protection. The divine crest as a symbol of a guardian bearer is said to be granted by the land gods, but Kai doesn't recall ever getting power from a god. It might have happened while he was unconscious, but until Kai knows all the details, he had better keep this a secret from the other villagers for now. Back in the village, Manso has just finished making a grave for Kai, but just then, Kai comes walking up like nothing happened. Manso is really happy to see Kai again, and things pretty much go back to normal after that, with Kai going back to his usual duties. Only this time he's really good at his job. He was only meant to plow a small section of the field, but before he knew it, he had plowed the entire thing, and he barely even broke a sweat. Kai panics for a second because he is worried that his divine crest might be visible, but after looking at himself in the water, he realizes his secret is still safe. The crest probably only appears when he is trying his hardest to do something, so as long as he doesn't work too hard, he should be fine. The others ask him if something happened because he seems way stronger than before, and Kai can't think of an excuse, so he just admits that he drank the godstone of the orc he killed. The others are shocked to hear that since regular soldiers like them don't get to drink full godstones, but since Kai was injured and about to die, he had no choice. In fact, on his way back to the village, he had to drink the godstones of almost 40 orcs that he came across on the battlefield. They make sense, so the others now understand why Kai is so strong, and Manso congratulates him for making it back alive. Meanwhile, one of the village women, Elsa, is spending a lot of time staring at Kai, so her friends start teasing her over it. At the same time, over in the village, Princess Jose goes over to the storage house to meet with the inventory checker. He tells her that he has finished preparing all the grave offerings, so she can depart for the grave cleaning whenever she wishes. Early the next morning, Kai is out practicing with his fire magic, and it has definitely gotten stronger since last time. But while he was doing this, Goz walks up and asks him to explain himself because he looks pretty suspicious right now. Kai can't disobey a direct order from the princess, so he tells her all about his fire ability. However, Goz doesn't seem too surprised by it since she has heard about similar abilities before. Although, ability users are usually members of special families or monks, so Kai is a bit of a rare case. Especially since he doesn't seem tired at all, even though he must have used a lot of spiritual energy. Goz recalls hearing a rumor that Kai suddenly became stronger after eating a bunch of godstones, so he must have a larger pool of spiritual energy than the average person. Goz asks Kai to train with her, and he has no right to refuse, so a few minutes later, the two are fighting the practice spears. Kai may be a lot stronger than he was before, but Josie is a guardian bearer, so he can't overpower her without straining himself a little, but he also doesn't want to accidentally reveal his divine crest if he tries too hard, so he needs to be careful. Once the duel is over, Kai heads to the well to get some water, and he is honestly surprised that he managed to get through the training so easily because he was holding back to avoid revealing his divine crest. That means he is so powerful that even a guardian bearer like Josie would stand no chance against him if he were to fight with his full strength. Just then, Josie asks him to bring her some water as well, so Kai rushes back over to her, and while she's washing her face, he asks her if all guardian bearers are equally strong. Goz tells him that she's actually one of the weaker ones because her father and brother are much stronger than she is. The strength of a guardian bearer depends on the protection of their land god, but the guardian bearer must also train on their own to get stronger. And when it comes to training, Josie is severely lacking. Technically, she doesn't mean to train because women aren't required to fight in this village. However, as a guardian bearer, she has a duty to protect the people of this village in battle, so she needs to get stronger as well. Besides, the duty of a guardian bearer isn't just to win battles. Kai is confused, but before he can ask her to explain, a rooster makes the morning wake-up call, and Josie technically isn't supposed to be out here, so she has to get back to the castle before she is seen. Before she leaves, Kai asks her if she can explain what she meant when she said guardian bearers do more than just win battles. She has grown fond of Kai, so she would like to explain it to him, but it's against the rules, so instead, she asks him if he would like to accompany her on her monthly grave cleaning duty. Her land god is enshrined in the Ida village, so she will make the necessary arrangements for Kai to come, and once they are there, she will be able to explain everything. Kai agrees to her terms, so a few days later, Josie, along with Kai and a few other soldiers, head for the Ida village. They were assigned to protect Josie in case anything happened because this place is ape territory, but the guys find it a little odd that they were randomly chosen to escort Josie when different squad usually handles it. One of the soldiers in K's squad heard a rumor that Josie personally requested for Kai to accompany her, which is why the entire unit got assigned to the job. He asks Kai if it's true, and Kai is about to confirm it, but Manso interrupts him mid-sentence and tells the others to leave Kai alone because there's no way the princess knows who he is. The others agree that it's hard to believe that Kai is friends with the princess, but they are still jealous of him regardless. Eventually, they arrive at the Ida village, and to Kai's surprise, it is nothing but a pile of ruins. The village was overrun by monsters years ago, and as a result, the villagers were forced to abandon it. But there's still a gravestone here, and it is their duty to maintain it in the name of the land god. Although the power of the land god of this village has dwindled so much that the land is already completely barren. Just then, Goz comes over and says she wants to take a look around the village, so she needs a guard to accompany her. The man immediately offers to escort Josie, but she tells him she actually wants Kai to do it instead. Kai and Josie start walking around the village, and when they get to a small flower garden, Josie kneels down and starts praying. Kai wants to ask what she's doing, but she needs absolute silence, so she tells him to stay quiet. Red aura suddenly begins to pour out of Josie's body onto the flowers, and when she is done, she explains that she was simply praying for the land god's grace to gather here. This is a job that only guardian bearers bound to a land god can do, but since this village was abandoned, her land god's spirit has grown very weak, which is part of the reason why she isn't as strong as her brother or her father. And while the village of Lag is able to grow tons of good crops thanks to her father's strength, she is barely able to maintain this little flower garden with her power. For this reason, Josie's father has never neglected his training because if he were to let himself grow weak, then it would be the end of Lag village as a whole. While land gods do grant power to the guardian bearers, that power is dependent on how strong the individual is, which is why all the guardian bearers have to train and drink a ton of god stones. Kai and Josie eventually return to the rest of the group, and it's time for them to clean the gravestone. So they all head down into the ruins while a few soldiers stay behind to stand guard. While Kai and Josie are cleaning the gravestone, he takes a close look at it, and he realizes it's the same thing as that stone he saw in the valley. And when he touches the inscription on this one, all the words are automatically translated in his head. The inscription mentions the name of the land god that this gravestone belongs to, so Kai goes around to the other side to read more, but for some reason, he can't read this part of the text. He can understand the individual words like pact and temple, but the words don't form a complete sentence, so he has no idea what it's supposed to mean. Koz notices Kai talking to himself, so she asks him if something happened. Kai is about to say something, but then he gets caught off guard by Koz's cleavage, so he looks away and stays quiet. Suddenly, soldiers come in and warn everyone their group of apes are heading this way. They all rush outside and begin hiding the grave, but before they could leave, the apes show up, so the captain orders Kai and Manso to escort Joes back to the village while the rest of them hold the apes off. However, while Kai and the others were fleeing, 2 apes cut them off, so Manso steps up to fight them. However, the ape tramples all over the flower garden that Joes has been working so hard to protect, so in a fit of rage, she rushes out and declares that she will kill it for what it has done. The ape is initially intimidated when it sees Joes' tattoos, but she has almost zero real combat experience, so she's shaking with fear. The ape realizes she's a novice and tries to kill her, but Kai jumps in and slashes it across the chest. Kai then spots the second ape attacking Manso's group, so he grabs the axe on the floor and uses it to slash the second ape in the shoulder, before jumping into the air and stabbing it in the head. Everyone is shocked that Kai was able to take the apes down so easily, but Josie is especially shocked because for a split second, she saw the Guardian Bearer tattoos on Kai's face. This was the end of episode 2. Subscribe to not miss the next part.